So while we were busy doing other things, not too long after Donald Trump kidnaps Maduro, Donald Trump had a meeting with oil executives. And I think you need to see how this went, because I don't think that this went the way that Donald Trump wanted it to. The response from these oil executives was not favorable. It appears they don't really seem to be interested in oil in Venezuela. Imagine that. Let's go ahead and get into it. So the first clip here, this is interesting. This is something a lot of people are pointing to. Tucker Carlson was at this oil executive meeting, and people are like, how did Tucker Carlson get there? Laura Loomer is crashing out online and is like, what the hell, right? But he's here. Check this out. Right here. So that's Tucker Carlson right there. And people have seen this video. It's all over online, and people are like, why is he there? He was probably there to report, probably there as a journalist. I don't know. He'll probably report back on this at some point. But I think people like Laura Loomer were upset because he was invited and she wasn't. It also goes to show you that as much as, Tucker Carlson has been criticizing Israel and also has spoken out against the ICE agents recently, also speaking out about what happened just recently in Venezuela, Tucker Carlson is still able to be invited into this Trump administration, at least into that orbit. So he hasn't completely broken that circle, right? So like, obviously, someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene would not be invited because Trump called her a traitor. So it appears that I think Tucker Carlson hasn't gone at Trump hard enough yet for him to be uninvited to these types of things here. Let's continue on. I'm going to mute it because of the music. Trump walks past him, and all these oil executives here, all these money grubbing, rich people who just want to take oil and just want to make a lot of money. You can see he makes his way all the way around the table there. Now, another thing that was interesting about this, the Halliburton executive, Donald Trump is questioning them about why they left Venezuela. And this part is hilarious. Check this out.
Couldn't express gratitude more so for the opportunity to return to Venezuela under the stability that I know that this team and your team are able to deliver. And so
when did you leave?
Huh?
When did you leave Venezuela?
As a company, we left under the sanctions in 2019. So we had intended to stay, and then when the sanctions went into place, we were required to leave.
So 2019, that was Trump's first term. That would have been under the Trump administration. And so you have an oil executive here who's explaining, well, the reason why we left Venezuela is because of the sanctions. Who put the sanctions there? Obviously, the Trump administration. Every administration that I can remember has had these sanctions against Venezuela, but it's just kind of funny that it happened under his administration, and Donald Trump is asking, why did you leave? It was an awkward meeting. Awkward in the sense that Donald Trump was doing some weird things. At one point, he decides to just stand up and walk towards the window to look at the renovations on the ballroom. I mean, who does this at this type of meeting? The real Thelma Johnson said, my second husband started doing stuff like this near his end. And people are wondering, is this a sign of dementia? Check this out.
Well, I got to look at this myself. Wow. What a view. This is the door to the bar.
Yeah. Gusta said Trump is in the early stages of dementia. This is what people have been pointing out, those that have experience with this. It's just an awkward time to do something like that, obviously. But here's the big to-do, right? Apparently, they're not really feeling this that much. Let's go ahead and get into this article here. Trump seeks $100 billion for Venezuela oil, but Exxon boss says country uninvestable. Dun, dun, dun. I'm telling you guys, it's a laugh. Donald Trump has asked for at least $100 billion in oil industry spending for Venezuela, but received a lukewarm response at the White House as one executive warned the South American country was currently uninvestable. Bosses of the biggest U.S. oil firms who attended the meeting acknowledged that Venezuela, sitting on vast energy reserves, represented an enticing opportunity. But they said significant changes would be needed to make the region an attractive investment. No major financial commitments were immediately forthcoming. Dun, dun, dun. So you see, folks, what did I tell you? And we can just put all the pieces together, right? I think some people who are still defending Trump at this point is just, it's sad, it's pathetic. But let's just add up the timeline here. Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, they start bombing boats in the Caribbean. They say that these boats are carrying drugs from Venezuela to take them into the United States. The math wasn't mathing because those boats would have to stop multiple times to get gas, even to make it all this way. They killed people, then denied that, oh, we don't know, that type of thing. Probably still attacking boats in the Caribbean as we speak at this moment. Next thing you know, Donald Trump makes threats to Nicolas Maduro and says that we are going to come after you if you don't step aside, if you don't resign. Later on, Nicolas Maduro says that he is open to meeting with the United States, to having conversation. And then bam, just like that, Trump's like, nope, no conversation. They go in, they kidnap Maduro and his wife, who, by the way, according to the photos from the courtroom, his wife had a black eye. So they were beaten, they were dragged, etc. His wife has nothing to do with this, by the way, but here we are. And there seemed to be some confusion here. Some of the people that were obviously against what Israel was doing when it came to Venezuela believed and fell for Donald Trump's lies and his rhetoric that this is going to be great for the United States. Never mind the fact that you were trying to implement some type of regime change there in Venezuela, which we know never works out great for the people who are there. And then on top of that, openly admitting that they want the oil, they want the resources. And now you have this meeting with these oil executives. So it was never about the people of Venezuela. It's about the money. It's about the oil. And it's also about the fact that, and I mark this on your calendar at some point, Israel is going to attack Iran again with the help of the United States, probably sometime this year. That is going to obviously hurt the oil issue for the U.S. because Iran does have a lot of oil as well. It will cause problems with the U.S. trying to get oil there in the Middle East. So then ultimately what will end up happening is that they could say, hey, we got this oil in Venezuela now, so we don't have to worry about Iran. So put all the pieces together. And now these executives say, we're not really interested. So Trump has a problem. Trump has a problem. All these policies that you see him doing, for the most part, are to enrich himself and his rich friends. And here we are. It goes on to say here, Trump has said he will unleash the South American nation's oil after U.S. forces seized its leader, Maduro, on January 3rd. One of the things the U.S. gets out of this will be even lower energy prices, Trump said in Friday's meeting at the White House. But the oil boss's presence expressed caution. Fast forward to Exxon. Exxon's chief, Darren Woods, said, we have had our assets seized there twice. And so you can imagine to re-enter a third time would require some pretty significant changes from what we've historically seen and what is currently the state. Today, it's uninvestable. So that's where they're at right now, ladies and gentlemen. And it's not looking good for Donald Trump. So, you know, something I've noticed during this term of Donald Trump, he seems to be much more careless than he was during his first term, just making rash decisions that obviously have a tremendous impact on people, on resources, without thinking about what is going to come next. Just saying, I'm going to do all these things, but not really having a plan. Not to say he didn't have irrational behavior during his first term, but this time around, I swear to God, I think it is 10 times worse. And so here we are. Now they got Nicolas Maduro in jail, awaiting trial. They can't prove that any fentanyl came from Venezuela because it's not even produced there. So then in the indictment, they had to change it to cocaine. And then you go through the research and you find out that, yeah, there's some cocaine that is produced in Venezuela, but most of that is actually produced in Colombia and South America. And that even the cocaine that's been leaving from Venezuela, the little that there is, actually ended up going to Europe, not the United States. So I say pay attention to this trial, because at the end of the day, it's going to tell you whether or not they really have a case. Like, I don't think they really do. But when we look at the money, we see what this is really all about. Now, one of these investors that I think people need to dive into is Paul Singer. He's a pro-Israel billionaire and a mega donor that's about to make a killing off of Venezuela's oil. Let's go ahead and get into this, and shout out to Mint Press News for this one.
Donald Trump just handed Venezuela's oil to Paul Singer, a pro-Israel billionaire mega donor cashing in on regime change. And that handoff happened through Citgo, Venezuela's US-based oil refinery and gas distribution company, and its most valuable overseas asset. In November of 2025, just weeks before the Trump administration removed and kidnapped Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, Singer's hedge fund, Elliott Investment Management, bought Citgo in a court-ordered fire sale for $5.9 billion, despite its real value at $11 to $18 billion. This was a public payoff, and that's because Paul Singer is one of the most powerful political financiers in the United States. Singer isn't just a hedge fund boss. He's a hardline foreign policy hawk and one of the most influential pro-Israel mega donors shaping U.S. foreign policy.
And so it always goes back to one or two things: Israel and the banks, the money. So do you see this? This is what I warn people about. This isn't just about Trump saying we want the oil. This is also to help Israel. There was a map, and I showed you guys last time. I don't have it with me this time, but there was a map where I showed you how Israel has basically infiltrated all the coastal South American countries, and Brazil still for the taking. And then you see what's happening in Venezuela. They are spreading Zionism throughout South America. And if you have not seen my biblical Israel versus modern day Israel video, make sure you watch that before you get into the part two, because the part two I'm going to discuss today will get into the geopolitics of it all and where this ends up at the end of the day, because I think this is really important.
Already run this playbook successfully in Argentina, where his hedge fund amassed sovereign debt claims and used them to exert political pressure, ultimately reshaping national economic policy in his favor and in the favor of Israel. Singer is a major funder of the Republican Jewish Coalition and the Foreign Policy Initiative. He also founded Startup Nation Central, which works closely with veterans of Unit 8200, Israel's elite cyber intelligence unit, helping channel U.S. tech investments into Israel's surveillance and AI sector. And he also organized the outsourcing of American tech companies and their research hubs for Silicon Valley tech giants like Google, Microsoft, Palantir, Intel, PayPal, Dell, and others to be outsourced to Israel's tech industry.
That is very important. The tech industry also making its way over to Israel. Remember what I told you about AI in Israel? So Israel isn't just focused on expanding and making this greater Israel, region. They're not just focused on increasing and strengthening their alliance with the United States and trying to obviously infiltrate other countries throughout the world. Israel is investing more in technology. And this will all make sense when we get to part two of the biblical Israel versus the modern day Israel. That's why I have to tell you guys the rapid pace that Donald Trump has been moving for Israel, the rapid speed that he is moving in reference to geopolitics. Everybody needs to pay attention. And then you see a decline that's happening there with him. So they're setting up all the pieces. They got the oil execs there. So you guys can see what's really happening. And at the end of the day, what do we have, right? So deception is a hell of a drug, because for people sitting back thinking Donald Trump did this, get this oil from Venezuela to help us. No, 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 no. This is nothing about us. And at some point, all of this is going to be exposed. I would say more obviously. The idea is to put the power in Israel. The idea is not to increase the power here in the United States. Eventually, that is the end game. The tech industry, AI, and the oil. And Israel can't have that if all those other countries remain doing what they're doing now. And that's why they want them to go. So don't be deceived. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.